Thank you for joining us today, and a special thank you to our panelists. I hope you all got to watch the intro videos. We made the decision not to do intros at the start of this because that would probably take up 15 minutes, and we'd rather focus on the actual topic. Everyone did a little recording. If you missed them, you're welcome to go back and look at the LinkedIn page and you'll be able to see them. But what I will say is that this is a pretty special bunch of people that we've got on this call. And although they actually stem from 4 different continents and work with pretty different challenges and constraints, one thing that they all definitely have in common is that they're all leaders. We do plan to keep doing events like this, so keep an eye on the OpsCentral page so you don't miss out. And you'll see that there's a poll running at the moment with topics, ideas. So please vote if there's something that you want to hear, and put a comment on there if there's a topic that we haven't thought of. We've actually been blown away by the response from this event. So let's keep it going. Let's keep the conversation going on an international scale. If you have questions, please put them in the chat while the panelists are talking. I'll make sure that I have a read. I might consolidate some. I will do my best to get through all of them. If there are too many questions, I apologize. We might not get to all of them. I will take them as feedback and try and have a follow-up session. We will make this available as a recording afterwards. And that's it. Let's just get started. Right. We're going to get you to kick this off for us, Chief Nam and Chief Lewis. And if you could answer for us how the leadership styles have had to evolve with the evolution of the fire service.
Well, again, certainly it's a pleasure to lead off the discussion here. So succinctly, we're trying to keep it as simple as we can. There's certainly been a number of paradigm shifts over the course of a number of decades that really define the fire service globally. I'd rather think of some of the initial changes in the post-World War II era that started defining not only our organizational structuring, but also our traits that started defining our leadership attributes and the manner in which we were organizing and thus leading our various organizations from the departmental standpoint. One of the most significant aspects of change since that post-World War II era really was the move away from the more predominant military influences that nearly all global organizations experienced at that time due to the influx and growth of our organizations as a result of the men and women that were coming back out of the military and moving into the developing and growing fire service professions. And that's true on a global basis. Certainly within the North Americas, that was a major attribute. And again, leadership always had that basis from the military standpoint. There were 2 other paradigm shifts that resulted back in the 1960s and then quickly followed by those in the 1980s. The influence of leadership, evolving leadership models and concepts and principles that were born out of the development of business modeling and corporate entities started influencing the fire service. So we started seeing a shift and a very subtle, slight change regarding leadership elements within the fire service and fire brigade organizations. It wasn't until the paradigm shifts of the what we call the modern era of the 1980s and the developments of our standards, our various types of regulatory requirements, specifically the National Fire Protection Associations that had both the North American influence and then eventually on a global basis. Once those standards became in place, we believe that there was much more influencing aspects that came back into leadership. So we moved back into the 1980s, some slight modifications, some different paradigm shifting regarding the paramilitary perspectives, and that stayed with us right up until I think the last 10 or 15 years. So the third wave of those paradigm shifts that's affecting leadership and those resulting changes have been in the last 10 years. I think we're seeing the change and paradigm challenges regarding how our organizations are structured, the assimilation of various other types of individuals within the organizations, and also the acculturization. So there's a variety of different elements there that have resulted in what used to be a very autocratic, military type based or paramilitary type based leadership style to the variations of authoritative, bureaucratic, democratic, to I think what we are now seeing is much more visionary, servant style type leadership, transformational and transactional types of styles. So organizations have modified their leadership both from a organizational, administrative, and operational standpoint. So we are seeing constant evolutions to meet the needs of the organizational basis and those challenges based on behaviors and values. More importantly, just the organizational makeup of our various departments, our brigades, and our organizations. But again, I'll add one more quick item here. It also goes back to the basis. Those that are military or civil defense based organizations continue to have a very structured, very cultural defined leadership style that has not modified or changed dramatically over numbers of decades. Those that are more municipal or civilian based continue to evolve based upon the organizational needs of their people and the styles of leadership that comes and goes relative to the people.
Thanks, Chief Nam. Right, Alan, your views.
Well, it's almost like we compared notes before this, but we didn't. So first of all, thank you to everybody that's attended. Thank you to my fellow panelists. I'm thrilled about this opportunity. I think to what Christopher was talking about, especially with the old leadership style, that is so true. So leadership styles evolved from that controlling and directing nature that was founded in that paramilitary type of history. You know, even our organizational titles are founded in military terminology. You know, when you consider what we use, you know, captain, lieutenant, sergeant, division, and battalion chief. All of those, you know, especially in North America, are rooted in that paramilitary history. This style of controlling and directing worked well for years in fire departments when the focus was almost strictly on fire suppression. And a significant part of the workforce, let's face it, was made up of veterans, because for very, very few years in our nation's history, we haven't been involved in some kind of a war. So I'm speaking specifically about North America at this point, but I think other countries, you know, can also relate to that. The old leadership style assumed that firefighters won't figure it out without me. You know, it was kind of the individual was in charge, the repository of knowledge, all good ideas came from the top. But the most successful leadership style that has emerged, you know, in recent years is really the assumption that firefighters are smart and they will figure it out. We just need to give them the tools, the knowledge, and the ability to elevate them up to a leadership role. So that's been a significant evolution in leadership styles, that mentoring, coaching, and developing rather than the controlling and directing. You know, it kind of goes back to what Simon Sinek always says, and what's your why? A successful fire service leader has to communicate what your why is. Why do you do what you do? You know, the older days were, you know, back to the controlling and directing, where that would have worked. You know, salute and execute was the motto of the day. The evolution of the fire service, though, and especially in the leadership, it's absolutely necessary to meet the changing scope of our service demands. Think about what we do now that we didn't do, you know, 60, 70 years ago. Hazmat, rescue, but, you know, trench rescue, confined space rescue, water rescue, you know, you name it, collapse rescue, you know, and an EMS. It's not just EMS as emergent 911 calls. You know, it's interfacility transfers, it's community paramedicine, it's vaccination clinics. There are things that are evolving that were not around, you know, 40 or 50 years ago. So again, because I said so doesn't work anymore. So those leadership styles have evolved. You know, as a leader, and again, leader, you don't have to be a formal, you know, pinned officer. You don't have to have a badge. A leader exists at many levels in the organization. So if you're listening today and you're not a chief officer, or you're not, you know, a lieutenant or a captain, this can apply it to you, and it should apply to you, because informal leaders are based, you know, many times on their knowledge, their skills, and their ability. But a leader should aspire to be a talent magnet, in that you attract other firefighters and then you empower them to perform at their highest point of contribution. That means you surround yourself with people that are driven, you compliment them, you build them up. You want to be a liberator. You create an environment where the fire station and the entire department, in fact, brings out the best firefighters and their best work. As a leader, you want to also be a challenger where you can define an opportunity and you can cause the firefighters to stretch beyond their current capabilities. It's kind of like the rubber band model. The rubber band really becomes useful when it's stretched. You know, that means exercising skills that maybe not are traditionally associated with the fire service. Yes, that may mean PowerPoint, it may mean Excel, it may mean Access, it may mean budgeting, it may mean things that, you know, people with non-traditional backgrounds come in and have special skills and abilities. You bring that out, you challenge them. And also it means that you're a debate maker, meaning that you drive sound decision-making through rigorous debate, you use data. You know, again, this is staff meetings that we use a rigorous debate, not the fire ground. So I do probably feel like I need to clarify that, but you engage people. You're also an investor as a leader, meaning you give firefighters, you know, credit, you give them ownership for the results, you invest in their success. And I'll just end with this. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Awesome. Thank you very much, both of you. Right, I'm going to throw this one over to Chief Horn. What qualities do you look for when identifying with other leaders around you? And then we'll go straight from that onto Jared to answer as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Debbie. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel and being asked back to ask these questions. So I think this is one of my favorite questions. What qualities do you look for when you're identifying leaders? And right away, I want to start off with a quote, kind of like where Chief Lewis left off, but start off with a quote from André Auguste Ledru-Rollin. And he was a French lawyer, a politician, and a leader of the French Revolution back in the 1848, 200 years ago. He said, "There go my people. I must go where they are going so I can lead them." Let me say that again. There go my people. I must find out where they're going so I can lead them. And that's truly a leader who, just like Chief Lewis said, that knows their why. We really didn't compare our notes. I swear we didn't. They know their why. They know what they're doing. They know, who they're leading. They understand who they're leading. They understand their crew, their tribe, their people. And as like you said, as we were hearing earlier about this more military idea, this is definitely another idea of just knowing your people and understanding who you lead, and also knowing who you work for. We always know, as us in fire service and in any kind of service, 24/7, 365, we're always taking care of our community, the people we're supposed to take care of, the people we're charged to take care of. But who we really work for are our people. We are hired, we are elected, we're volunteers, we're asked to take care of your people. And that's who you work for. And you stay humble as that as a leader. And that's because how you got there is because everybody else trusted you. And also, like you said, you might not be a high leader, a chief officer, but you got to stay in your lane. You want to definitely do your job in your lane. There's no reason you should be complaining about what somebody's doing somewhere else in another department, another area, who's doing this, who's not doing that. We definitely want to stay in our lane. And we also want to stay humble. I gotta be quiet, I'm in the library. And we lead by example when we stay humble, and we also wear the brand. Wearing the brand is, like wearing the badge, wearing the patch, wearing where you belong from, wearing your branding, knowing who you are, work for, and you're part of that team. There's been so many times I've seen firefighters move up to engineer, move up to lieutenant, captain, battalion chief, assistant chief. They get to chief, and then all of a sudden everybody's knocking on their door telling.
We have a slight signal issue there. Let's just give Chief Horn a second to reconnect. All right, it might have actually dropped off. Jared, let's go to you, and then we can, if Chief Horn jumps back on, she can finish off what she was saying.
Too easy. First of all, thank you to Debbie and OpsCentral for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm feeling very humbled to be here with all these other great minds, and thank you to everyone viewing today. I just want to start off with a disclaimer that while I work for Fire Rescue Victoria, my views may differ from theirs. I'm representing myself today. So things I look for in a good leader, and I'm speaking probably from a different role to a lot of the other panelists, where I'm a leading firefighter. So maybe a junior officer or a sub officer in the UK, senior man, or if you still use that term in the US, or lieutenant. So I'm talking more on the fire floor. And in my organisation, I move around a lot. We don't have one single station. We get detailed to many different stations within a district. So you're constantly working with new people and new crews. So it is really important to have a skill to be able to identify who the leaders are when you go to a new station and you're working with a crew that's been together for 8, 9, 10, 12 months. And the first one is passion for the cause. When you're looking for a leader, and I'm sitting in an echo chamber here, people must have a passion for a cause here. They must care about the job, first and foremost, and what the job is. The job is service. The job is looking after the community. The job is doing, looking after the trucks, being prepared for emergencies, doing community engagement work. And I really like the point about being a talent magnet. You walk into a fire station and you can tell who the firefighter is that everyone's drawn to. And they're usually the most passionate in the room. They usually have really good interpersonal skills and interpersonal communication. They're really good communicators. They're very clear when they talk. They're very good at setting objectives. They're very good at setting expectations and completing those responsibilities. They set expectations and standards. They don't walk past anything. And that brings me to my next point. A good leader is the hardest worker in the room. You have to be. In our organisation, leadership is usually aligned to rank. That means that you have to do the job below you as well as an extra bit. In the career service, it's signified by giving a bit more remuneration. In the volunteer service, it's a bit more responsibility. You have to be the hardest worker in the room. You have to be able to, even when you don't feel like it, do the smallest of tasks. You have to show people that you will not ask them to do things that you yourself do not do. So while my guys are sitting on the couch, I'm in the office ordering stores. I'm in the office ensuring that the drills are set for the next week. But I'm also out there helping them wash the truck. I'm also helping them do station duties. I'm also helping them clean tools and make sure that the truck's ready to go. And I'll finish on this point. Lastly, a good leader, identifying a good leader is someone who is an individual problem solver for the team and a team problem solver for the service. What that means is that they can address conflict within the team. They can solve problems within the team. They can make people work together. If Sally and Bob don't get on, they have the skills and the interpersonal communication to be able to solve that issue, to be able to find ways around it. But they're also a team problem solver for the service. They can identify where their weaknesses are and who has strengths in that, and be able to help empower and facilitate that person to bring their strengths to the table. Yeah, that's what I look for in a good leader.
Thanks, Jared. We've got a question that's come through relating to this one, and I don't mind who on the panel takes it, but if nobody jumps in, I'll pick on someone. So could a couple of speakers address how early in their career that they look for those leaders? So, you know, is it right from day one? All right, off you go.
Yeah, from day one. From recruits, I do a lot of instructing in my organisation. Day one, when I meet them, I can tell who will be a good leader. I can tell who the other recruits will be drawn to and who will take responsibility to act for the group and be a caretaker of that group. And that's what a leadership is. When we find those people, we need to continue to develop those people. That's just my opinion. If we put time and effort in those people, we can build our leaders of the future from day one.
Great. Chief, are you back on? We had some connection issues. I just want to see if you're back on. And
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's perfectly clear. So you were mid very passionate sentence. Yeah.
So where I was finishing up was just saying, you know, just like this question was lead by example. You see by day one who's leading by example. We all know, or those who know are leaders, we all remember cleaning the bathroom and cleaning the toilets and making sure the blue liquid was still cleaner, was still in the toilet. So everybody else knew you did the job. So, you know, by day one, by leading by example, and also serving, you know, you serve, and without being asked to serve. You're there at the ready and you're ready to serve no matter what the hour, and serving your community and taking care of your community. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Chief Tracy, we're going to go to you with, do you think that different constraints and different times call for different leadership styles? And we certainly know that the group of people we have on the call here all have pretty different challenges. What are your thoughts on different styles?
Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this group. And I'd like to welcome Martin, Simon. And I really like Britta. I agree with everything you said, humble. I like that a lot. Alan, thank you for what you've shared. And of course, Chris, he's always profound. I'd like to just touch upon different leadership styles. Touch upon admonishment. When you have to tell somebody they did something wrong. You know, they say, if you want to praise somebody, praise them in public, admonish somebody in private. Well, sometimes you have to admonish somebody in public. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. And Gerard really hit on the fact that here in his department, he's compelled to work in different units. He's detailed in different units, whereas he may be, let's say, the senior or the officer, but that company or that unit, that brigade, he doesn't represent that brigade. Who represents that brigade are the members of that unit, that fire unit. They work there all the time. They're the team, they work together. You may be a boss detailed there for a day. You do not represent that unit. You're not there. Every unit in every department on the planet, every unit has a different personality. And that's made up of all the personalities of the members that work there. They may be all engaged. And it could be that Gerard works in a unit one day and he's disappointed in the fact that maybe they're not engaged. And maybe there's not an informal leader there where he could say, oh, that's the talent right there. And that's just a fact of life. You know, we may be military, we're paramilitary, all of these things. We could be a volunteer department. And where I'm saying is admonish someone in public. I had, let's say, an occurrence, if you will, and it was on a response, an emergency response, where a heating unit and an occupied multiple dwelling was malfunctioning. And in the room, which was one level down, it was a sub-level of the building where the unit was located, the carbon monoxide levels were nearing 1,000. And the structure was of ordinary construction, which means in the fire service that smoke and hot gases can rise within all the voids in that building. So if there's 1,000 parts per million of carbon monoxide in the basement, in the lower level of that building, you can guarantee that it's on the first floor, maybe on the second floor. And on the first floor is an occupied apartment, second floor, same thing, all the way up to the top floor. Because carbon monoxide, well, whatever's producing carbon monoxide is probably a combustion process, and it's heating those gases. And once they're heating, they're buoyant, they're going to rise in the building. Well, the first due unit that arrived that would perform the investigation was in position, and they were down in the basement. There was a second to arrive company that should take the position on the floor above, right above them. And when I arrived, I noticed they were still sitting in the apparatus. They weren't even off the apparatus. And what that tells me as an incident commander is they're not engaged. When they arrived, they should have been off that apparatus in front of the building, waiting for a report from the basement. And as soon as they heard that report, that there was high carbon monoxide levels, they should have entered the building right away and gone to work. They don't need a chief in the street holding their hand, telling them what to do. We're dealing with adults. These firefighters, every one of them is an adult. And the fact that they were sitting in the apparatus did not please me at all. So when I entered the building and on my way to the building, I called the officer of that unit to ask him what's his location. I already knew his location because he was sitting in the apparatus. What's your location? And of course, the response was, we're headed to the building, chief. Okay. Well, as soon as he entered the building with the firefighters, now the firefighters represent that unit. This officer, he was there for a day. He was covering for a day. He wasn't assigned to this unit. He happened to be detailed there for a day. I may never see this officer again because our department is 11,500 firefighters, that large. I may never see him again because he could be working in another borough. When he entered and those firefighters entered, I said to him, I never want to see you sitting in that apparatus again. I want you to be in a position to go to work. And they did just that, and they checked out the things, and we had to open windows, vent, and reduce the CO levels in the building so that no one was overcome, and there was those issues. On the way out, this officer approached me to say, hey, chief, I really didn't appreciate you admonishing me in public. And I says, well, that's okay. And I sent him on his way. But I did that not for him, not for his understanding of what went on. I did that in public so the members of that unit could hear it and they understand that they represent that company. They should have been off that apparatus. If that officer wants to sit in the rig, he can do so. They got to be in front of the building. They got to go to work. They represent the unit. So that's a leadership style that nobody ever talks about, but that's something that I believe in. It had to be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Tracy. Right, I'm going to throw that over to you now, Simon.
Yes, thank you. And as per my comments, thank you to everybody for having me. Another change of accent and very interesting insights that we've heard already. So hopefully I can add to that. I think the question asks about different constraints, challenges, and the different leadership styles that sort of demands. And I've sort of been reflecting on the question, I think, and I believe that although there are different constraints, challenges, and opportunities, the one thing for me that is constant within the environment of leadership at the moment, and probably will continue, is change and change management. So in short, the answer to the question is, of course, yes. To expand on that, we don't exist or lead in a bubble. And the ever-changing internal, external environment will inevitably mean that we have impacts on organisational culture, change readiness, individual motivation, as per the last conversation, and of course, health and well-being of our staff as well, which is a key consideration for us. What's come across to me tonight is clear is that the fire service is absolutely a service, people-based organisation. The people are the service, and the role of the leader is to enable them to achieve their potential to maximise the community outcomes. And I think it's inevitable that leadership styles and leadership approach therefore must respond and adapt accordingly. I'm going to give, I think it's already been mentioned actually, that the role of the firefighter has also changed throughout the years. So that's another facet of why the leadership role has changed too. Excuse me. I'd like to give a few insights into what I believe some of the key features of my leadership style are within this changing environment. Some of these have come across a little bit already, but I think I'd like to expand a bit further. So the first one for me is that I recognise in my own leadership and reflections that I don't have all the answers, and the diversity of thought and contribution from all needs to be nurtured and then valued. This is the basis of the strategic enabling team and the structure we've got in place within the West Midlands Fire Service, which operates very much as a flat structure and is a diverse team of equals. The second point for me is to understand and recognise that it's okay to not know everything and not have all the answers. Demonstrating that humility is important, and it's not a weakness to demonstrate that, but it is a fine balance, because at the same time, I believe we do have to provide confidence to the team, the organisation, and the public that despite the challenges we face, we can work things out and find a route through. The third point for me is that my reflection is that I try to create an environment where people can express vulnerability and uncertainty on the situation or a challenge without judgment, to help them build their confidence in speaking up. I think that occasionally if people do build up that courage to make a point that might be different or controversial, and if that is shot down, you can find they're reluctant to speak up again. So I think creating that environment is important. The fourth and penultimate point for me is being self-aware and emotionally intelligent and understanding how you respond to situations, recognising the individual impact on culture and the environment that you have within the leadership role that's bestowed on you by the organisation. And the final point for me is quite a basic one, but it's about just being human and recognising that we're all human beings here, trying to do the very best for our communities. So hopefully that provides some further perspective into the debate and the question that was asked. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. And we've got a question that comes through on, oh, we've got an echo there. On servant leadership as a style and how that's different to traditional leadership, if it is. I know we've got a few fans of servant leadership in here, so if one of you could jump in, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll add some items to that. Servant leadership, I think, as a philosophy, has gained a lot of traction globally over the last number of years as our mission has changed. So as many of us have described thus far, our roles, our responsibilities, the manner in which we have re-identified with the fact that we have someone to serve to and for versus the internalization of, you know, our existence as a fire service, as a brigade, as firefighters, as such, which is, and that was a significant paradigm shift, I think, overall. We as a emergency service organization have recognized and I think focused in on that delivery of service. Above all, it is service. It's something bigger than all of us individually. I think as we've recognized the collectiveness of the organization of why we exist for the public that we serve, it has brought forward back into focus that, you know, what our oath has been to the public and reaffirmed our mission in life. And I think that has provided clarity and purpose and unity within the organizations for the most part. But the challenge continues to be is how to get some of our newer members that join our organizations to understand what that may be. And as I think, as Gerard mentioned, you know, we can identify those leaders up front. We can identify those that are coming on board and joining for the right reasons. There are others that have to be developed into the right mindset, physically and mentally, for that role and responsibility. And as a result of these changes, we just have such a mixture. Those that came forward to join the organizations, although we never had that terminology of servant leadership, they were there for those right reasons, to serve the public at large. I think right now we have this challenge of why people are coming in, why they exist in the organizations, and the need for strong leadership, both at the unit level and then all the way up through the various levels within the organization, all the way to the top bosses, to clearly understand and reconnect with the units at the field and with the personnel of why and who we serve and such. But politics gets in the way. But again, it's I think a telling nature of how our culture and society has undergone change, and that change is good, back to the focal point of servant leadership.
Thanks, Steve. Right, Captain McKenzie, I'm going to throw this to you. How has technology played a part in the evolution of leadership in the industry?
Well, and thank you for having me, and what a great perspective to hear from the fellow panelists. Really, one of the keys is being a lifelong learner, right? And I feel like I've just scratched the surface, including seeing how we've adapted to tech. So early on, EMS, fire, wildland, urban interface, we had a command and control two-way voice leadership structure where only the captain had the radio. And so they had very, very important situational awareness that they may not have the opportunity to share with others, that we see the 10 firefighting orders and 18 situations that shout, watch out, have a lot to do with that base level of technology. Then we saw all of the members in at least my organization, everyone had a radio, and we were hopefully all on the same TAC channel. So the leaders had to adjust. Then the captain got a mobile data computer. Oh, okay, now they communicate directly to dispatch silently, which saves on airtime. Had to adjust their leadership styles. We received pagers for everyone in the organization. So every single sworn member could be sent a message, or at least a message could be sent to the pager. And leaders would adjust their intent and their intended communication focus and things adjusting there. Thermal imaging is technology that leaders have had to adjust their back to siloed information. The captain is often the only person with a tick, and they're the only person with the SA. I've seen and used an AI-enabled app on my phone for leadership specifically that assisted me in adjusting my communication. And I had mentors who had the other end of the app. How's Kirk doing on his communication skill sets? But only a couple of us in the district had that. So it's interesting to see how things move along. And while we move from the old school into today, I saw a video conferencing opportunity with machine vision that would assist with artificial intelligence to know a patient's vitals in real time that they don't need an app for. Dispatch sends them a link, bam, they're video conferencing like that in real time. And then the first responder could use that for the stroke doctor, the trauma surgeon, social worker, law enforcement officer. Leadership's having to adjust to this. And we're moving to hands-free thermal imaging, hopefully for all personnel. And then one day, maybe not so far out, we'll have a common operating picture. I'm guessing in augmented reality, at the very least, it'll be on a phone or a tablet or an MDC, and we'll know where personnel are, what their biometrics are. And so as we've seen in the military, all the way from when we started in our industry, they're leading the way in technology in the divesting and legacy, investing in next gen. And I would say that the digitally enhanced, the actively learning, digitally enhanced leaders of today are looking to the smart future of tomorrow, and they are those leaders that are prepping ahead of us to take on smart command. And it's an interesting evolution to see the digital advancing.
Thanks, Captain Mackenzie. Right, Neil, as an innovator in your area, and what are your thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, thanks all, and good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Really proud to be given this opportunity to present. And just by luck, I get to speak about my favourite topic, digital leadership or digital transformation. Whether that's a coincidence or not, you can make your own minds up, but I believe there's no such thing as coincidences. So just a couple of things for me to start, really, that, you know, there's a feeling like technology solves the problem, and it doesn't. Technology is just the enabler. So what I mean by that is you can have the most expensive systems in the world, but if the culture and the digital tempo that you set, that will define the transformation. So what I mean, in other words, is you can spend £1 million or $1 million on a product, but if people use the same ways of working, then you'll not see any value from your financial investment. And I think that's a really important thing that, you know, even COVID has painted a picture where we think technology is going to be the solution, and it's not. And I think we've heard it a lot from other speakers that the solution lies in people, which lies in culture, which lies in setting the direction. So I want to talk something specifically around what sort of COVID has taught us in digital leadership, and it's helped us with collaboration. And what I mean by that is that managers can work with less restrictions, which enables this tempo that we have never ever experienced. So what I mean by that you can have you know, one-to-ones. Historically, you can have one-to-ones with your staff to provide a support mechanism, and you'd have to line diaries up, and it may be a couple of days in the future where you can get together. What technology has enabled us to do is to be in that space in real time. So provide that feeling of confidence to staff that the leader is always there to enable that support mechanism. I think that's really important. And then another thing, I mean, that's really on a one-to-one basis. On a wider basis, for for strategic leaders that want to reach across the workforce, they've now got the capabilities to reach the whole workforce. And something I'd like to just put across to the group and everybody watching, that the ability to use Zoom or Skype or whatever, that's been around for probably 3, 4, 5 years, but it's only been COVID that's accelerated the ability to reach across to the workforce. However, there is a risk though with the digital technology that we won't balance out what is digitally proportionate through digital working and face-to-face. So I personally think that, you know, like your general team meetings and like performance-related meetings that are, you know, can be pretty boring with an agenda and all the things that are important but are very vanilla. Those can be digital, because you can get through in a very business-like way. But then the softer elements of leadership work much better face-to-face. And I think this is a clear example of the application of situational leadership as well. So another theme I want to talk about is ways of working. So this evolves around culture. So I know within all of our organizations, we're going to have years of legacy processes and custom and practice. And what we need to focus on now is laser straight processes with automation and augmentation that sort of has the outcome of zero waste, because this is where the efficiencies lie. And going back to, you know, your investment, your financial investment, and you so what. So digital doesn't come cheap, but you've got to show the value. And then the final point on those processes are evolved through culture. And what we need to be investing in is investing in imagination and different thinking. And that needs to come through the leader. And then my final point on this, that digital, and I think Kirk was just touching on this, to expand on your point, that digital leadership needs to be a core competence of a strategic leader, probably any leader, just like finance and HR. So, and where this evolves is, I believe that the traditional way of asking analysts for the answers to questions needs to transform, where leaders understand the data sets enough to turn this into intelligence, so that enables strategic decision making. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks very much. Right, the next question, and I can see we've got a few questions going through there, and I would encourage the panelists to, I see Alan's done a little bit, you're welcome to type some answers, because I've got a feeling we won't get through everything, but as I can integrate them, I will. But one thing we know is that leadership is not always easy. So I would like to go to you, Martin, for what is the most heartbreaking moment you've experienced as a leader? You there, Martin?
First
Martin,
of all,
you
I want to appreciate you, Debbie, for this wonderful opportunity, joining the fire service from Nigeria. I want to say thank you very much for these opportunities. I'm able to see others watching and listening. Moving on, the question that was raised. In fact, I remember, I would just, through a story, tell us what I feel. On 16th October 2019, I remembered when the public within my state called for my sack. It was terrible, knowing that they don't know how fire service operates because of maybe a little thing that happened in the system. And the whole public whom we've been serving, who have been pushing and saying that you are doing well, turn back again to say that they want you to be sacked by the government. So you will not become the fire chief of the state again. It was very devastated and heartbroken. But all the same, we will later overcome the whole thing. But the question is, how did it happen? How was I able to overcome those things that happened then? It was a very big crisis in Anambra State, Nigeria, per se, where I reside and where my fire department is. But all these things are being done when we form or when we build resilience in what we are doing. If you're able as a leader, as a fire chief, or a fire leader, you're able to build a resilience, then you're able to overcome a lot of things. If you cannot be able to do that, it becomes a very big problem to you. But how do you build this resilience? That is the issue. If you can be able to do that, then you'll be able to overcome a lot of things as a leader. One, you'll be talking about maintaining when in terms of this crisis, you try as much as you can to continue to maintain the relationship you have with your family, we have with other firefighters, we have with other fire professionals within the locality and the areas where you are covering. If you can be able to maintain that relationship, a lot of things will come by and you will never know when it will come and pass. Then also we'll talk about developing self-confidence. If you're able to develop this, you find out that all those things people are saying that you did or maybe you did not do and they're saying that you do, you'll be able to maintain it and build a very strong self-confidence, because in terms of crisis, it's going to weigh you down as a leader. But if you don't have that self-confidence in you, nowhere you cannot, and you will never move on. Then also we'll talk about one, looking for further opportunities of self-discovery. In this aspect, there's already a crisis. Are you going to allow it to weigh you down? No. You have to develop more things, other discoveries, which is going to assist your fire department. If you can develop more things out of what you've been having before, then you see that a lot of people, their eyes which are there, those things they condemn you with, they will see that those things are not existing, that you are still ready to serve the public as a leader. Now we'll look at also accepting the circumstances which you may not be able to change. Because when the public called for the resignation, or maybe calling the government to sack me as a fire chief, then I have to see that they didn't understand what they're saying and what they're doing, because they don't know how it works in fire service. Then what do? I have to do what? I have to take that circumstances and never allow it to weigh me down. All you need to do is to move on. There's one thing I will always tell fire chiefs, fire leaders, that's one thing I will always tell them to do. One, you must believe in yourself, that you can control all circumstances that is going to come within your fire department. If you don't believe in yourself, that is when it start to weigh you down. When crisis comes, it will weigh you down. You can never move forward. So you need to accept those things that you cannot change, and also make sure the use of self-discovery and the self-confidence to build all those other things. And that is why I tell people and tell leaders as well, that if you're a leader and you are leading and nobody is following you, then you are making a walk. If you're a leader and you are leading and nobody is following you, you're only doing a walk. That is a problem for you. And in terms of crisis, nobody will continue to follow you. So all you need to do is this. One, you must make sure you're a leader that commands attention. When you are there, when you are not there, people, your followers, which are also firefighters, other fire professionals, they always follow your footprints. So that when crisis comes, just like when I was called, they call for my sack, they have to see that those things they're doing, this is the person they needed for this job. And they have to develop that mind again to believe in you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. You used that same quote with me when we chatted a few weeks ago, and I have to say that I've quoted you since. I absolutely love that. If you're a leader and you've got no one following you, then you're just going for a walk. Right, I'm going to throw the same question to you, Gerard. What is the most heartbreaking moment that you have experienced as a leader?
Thank you, Debbie. Mine resonates a lot with Martin, and I really do love that quote about nobody was following me, so I was just doing a walk, and that's what my story is going to be about. And Simon touched on it, and it was the reflection side of leadership. Now, I've wanted to do this job since I could remember. I grew up behind a fire station. So from day dot, I wanted to be a firefighter. All through school, I report from Engine Company 82. I did work experience with fire brigades. I volunteered. It's all I ever wanted to do. So the day that I got into the career service, it was the day of my dreams, and I worked hard. And now I'm not a natural firefighter. I'm the firefighter that had to work hard on his skills. I had to train extra. I had to stay back at college after everyone had gone home to learn how to bowl hose better. And I did work really hard, and I was credited with the reputation of being a good firefighter. And that's all that anyone ever really wanted in this job, is for someone else to say, hey man, you're a good firefighter. Anyway, I got to join young, and after 5 years, I decided to take the next step in my career and promote. A good firefighter doesn't always make a good leader. And this is something I had to learn, and this is something that slapped me in the face. After my promotion, I was working at my fire station at the time. It was a regional fire station, and we just had a whole bunch of new recruits come on station, and we needed to run an increment program, or what we call a truck qualification, on a brush tanker. And I put my hand up. I was a very good operator of the brush tanker. I thought, yeah, I can teach these new recruits how to use a brush tanker. So I started teaching them, and I got very frustrated, and I'd beat them down. I would yell at them when they couldn't achieve things. I would throw things out of frustration. That's terrible leadership. And later on in my career, I got talked to by my officer, and he said, what are you doing? You can't be doing this to these people. And I said, well, they should be performing better. I didn't understand what leadership was at the tender age of 26. Anyway, it was something that stuck with me for a long time, and I got posted to a new station, and I was in the same role, and I tried to do the same tactic, and I wasn't getting any results. And that's about the time that I did what Simon suggested, was look inward, look at me, and see what's wrong with me. Why aren't they doing it? And I guess from that point on, it's really changed my perspective in leadership. It's not about someone working for me, it's about me working for them. It's about me enabling them to achieve the best of their abilities. And that's not just skill-based acquisition, that's everything. I'll wake up 10 minutes early of a night shift if we're still asleep, and I make everyone coffee and breakfast, so that when my firefighters wake up, they come into the mess, there is a coffee waiting for them. There is breakfast waiting for them. I've learned the names of their partners, their children, and I'm invested in what they do. Creating that personal relationship, and then learning how to talk to them and how to teach them and how to educate them and how to allow them to achieve the best of their abilities is what leadership is. So in closing, my most heartbreaking moment was, like, all I ever wanted to do was be a firefighter and be a good one at that. My most heartbreaking moment that I've come across as a leader in a leadership role was that I wasn't. And so now I'm really trying to work hard in all my roles within my fire service to become a better leader, and to understand humility and to let go of ego and to help facilitate other people achieve what they need to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Jared. That is like incredible honesty, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure there are a lot of people on this call who connect with that. What I will say is that honest leaders make the best leaders. So you might have been concerned that you weren't a leader back in the day, but it clearly demonstrated that you are now. Right. I'm trying my hardest to follow questions here and integrate them in. So again, apologies if I miss any of them, but I'm going to throw this one to Simon. What do you think the difference is between rank or titles and leadership? And I see there's been a question about leadership versus management. So if you can weave that in, that would be awesome.
I will try, and I think that Dave Robertson had also asked this exact question as well. So hopefully it responds to that one that was in the sidebar. But I will just give a mention to the last contributor, Gerald, there, which I thought was really fantastic and honest. And there's lots of places in the West Midlands Fire Service here in the UK for people such as yourself. So really, really well done, and thank you. To get on to the question, the difference between rank, titles, and leadership. So I guess for me that. And again, it's come out a little bit already, that the rank or the role gives you a leadership position and I guess leadership authority on behalf of the organisation. It means that you've got that responsibility and accountability to lead within your organization, but it's not enough to believe that that will make you effective as a leader. I also would add at this point that it's not to say that only those in a leadership position can or indeed should be encouraged to influence, but just that if you are fortunate to be in a recognised leadership position, then you are actually expected to, would be my perspective on things. I think in terms of perhaps a little bit going back to the early contributions, that the rank and the leadership question probably has evolved with time. So organisations, the fire service being no different, to a greater or lesser extent, mirror societal expectations and changes within society. And I think that we have seen a move away from status and down upon people through things such as authority and rank. There's an acceptance of moving away from outright authority towards people having an understanding of the why. I think Simon Sinek was mentioned earlier, having an opinion themselves and be able to make a contribution. That's what motivates people. And I think that is, something we need to focus on and be a central feature of our leadership considerations as we move forward. And I think it's a shift for me that I personally welcome. I raised the point earlier that I believe in a wide-ranging and diverse contribution will lead to more effective decision making. So to some extent, if it's harnessed correctly, it should be welcomed as an opportunity for us rather than as a challenge. I know not everybody will see it like that, but I do think that is, certainly my paradigm on this as well. And I think that it should really cause leaders to reflect on whether they themselves are remaining current and relevant in their leadership style with the expectations that their workforce will have in the evolving nature of society that we see. I think I'd also go on to suggest that the position bestowed upon people through rank doesn't necessarily mean that they can lead their team effectively. Obviously, we've touched on this point already. And I am certainly not sitting here pretending to be the consummate leader. I am definitely a work in progress. But what I do commit to, which I think stands me in reasonably good stead, is reflection, self-improvement, and operating in a way, despite my position in the organisation, that recognises I'm no more important as a person and a human being than anybody else. I've just got a different role with different responsibilities and accountabilities, and that's very much how I try and lead. I think two final points for me is that positively within the West Midlands Fire Service, we've actually purposely moved away from referring to ourselves by rank or role, and we instead define ourselves as the leadership team. We define ourselves as strategic enablers, the key being enabling. That is our shared endeavour to create an enabling environment rather than one of direct command or control. And my final point, which might be more controversial or contentious, I guess, is that there's often an assumed position that that's okay, apart from on the incident ground, I guess, is the sort of common phrase that you might hear. But I think even here, with the exception of a few high pressure, time critical situations, I personally reflect on my career, which is 22 years in the service now. And I still believe that I've seen the best results when possible, it's not all the time, through retaining that humility and that approach, even at the incident ground, on being inclusive and understanding and enabling other people to define how we might, resolve safely and effectively and assertively resolve an incident. So even there, I think that's something we can reflect on across the wide range of leadership challenges and positions we might find ourselves in. So Debbie, you'd have to remind me, because I think you've asked me to thread something else into the question. But I'm not sure.
Got an echo there. The difference between leadership and, I'm checking if there's someone here. The difference between leadership and management.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between leadership and management for me, I think, as was inferred by the question, is that the management is about ensuring that there is a governance and that things are done correctly and things are done right. I guess it's that old phrase, isn't it, of leadership doing the right things, management doing things right, or something along those lines. I guess for me, the difference would be that we do need people to make sure that the policies, the processes, the systems and the arrangements we have in place to maintain health and safety, being one example, are effectively managed. So that would be the difference for me. Thanks, Debbie.
Right, thanks, Simon. Chief Horn, what are your views on the difference between rank and title? And
thank you very much. Hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
And I don't get kicked out by the librarian. Okay. So rank and title and position, they're just much like Chief Barry was saying, it is business management. When I think of those rank and title and position, I think of that organizational chart that you do see in management, you know, all the boxes and all the links and who's connected to who. That's a position, that's a rank, that's a title. And there's one thing you don't see in those boxes. You don't see the word leader. It's not in there. For two reasons. Number one, because we're all leaders. We're in those organizational chart, part of that management, because we all are leaders. But more importantly, number two, is because leadership is an action item. It's what we do. It's how we do our job. It's all in action. We definitely want to be authentic, like all the other all the different panelists on here, being so authentic and being true and being passionate about our jobs. That's what you're not going to see in an organizational chart. You're definitely going to see that in them, in their personality and how they lead. They're problem solvers. Leaders are problem solvers. You know, just this morning at 2 this morning, we had a semi-truck rollover in our community. And it really took one of our firefighters that had a certain tool in his pocket to be able to solve that problem and get the safety and the release that we needed to get done. So everybody on the crew is definitely a problem solver, and that's part of their being leadership, no matter what their title is. We're also effective in our messaging and in our communications and how we speak to everybody else and to that crew and to our people. And we're loyal, and we're definitely, you know, committed to the job, and we're reliable, because if not, no one's going to follow us. Our crew's not going to follow us. And just like Chief Martin said, we're just going for a walk. That does nobody any good, because there's definitely, we have to take care of safety. We have to take care of the call. And a leader definitely builds trust of the others, you know, having a count of everybody. Like Chief Mann just was saying, you know, not only making breakfast for everyone, but knowing all your crew and knowing their family name and knowing their wife's name and their husband's name and their kids' names, and making sure you're remembering birthday parties and times. And that's being part of that, you know, building that trust in that crew. And because you're molding the culture, you're molding, you're shaping your culture. Chief Tracy was talking about that, how the culture in every department, even A, B, and C shift, we're all different. And just building that culture that works for your crew to make sure you can go out on those calls 24/7 when you're on shift. And you motivate and you encourage. Again, these are words that leaders use that, you know, actually do the job, and you use those words, and people come up into your mind, who does that, who's doing that in your community. And it's more than just a title or a rank or a position. It's how you are responsible for the job that you're doing it and doing it well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Right, Chief Num, I'm going to throw the next question to you. What responsibilities do leaders have for self-development? And I think this has actually been a little bit of a theme so far, but let's dig a bit deeper.
That is exactly true. So that question really resonates with many of the comments that have been generated thus far. And does a leader have responsibility? The unequivocal statement is yes, to the highest degree. And now more than ever, I think it's such an important attribute and facet and requirement of either an emerging and developing or an existing leader. And the reason being is that we are so bombarded by change. And as a result of the constant change of everything within organizations, within society, within our world, change also suggests that we have to look internally to either make improvements, identify whether we're part of the status quo and so forth. But in order to do that, we have to reach well beyond our organizations and ourselves. So, you know, seeking out and staying relevant, I think, is the important element initially. So in order to stay relevant, one has to seek out self-development, and that self-development, again, has to be dynamic. It has to be an entire career's worth of involvement. It's not something that starts and ends at a particular time or when one achieves a certain rank or position of responsibility. It's a continuous learning process that into itself also lends back from a leader's standpoint that the organization has to have continuous learning. A continuous learning organization is one that thrives, develops, and continuously reevaluates where it's at and how to improve. And that improvement goes back to performance improvement to the public. That relates back to some of the attributes of servant leadership and so forth. So one of the things that I think is very important for leaders to identify is that they need to explore other disciplines, other professions, other functional areas and domains well beyond the fire and emergency service. There's such a wealth of information and insights, lessons and learnings, best practices that come out of other non-applicable professions that one would never think about. But it's connecting those dots to these other domains, professions, and functional areas that provides the leader with suggested avenues and paths, and provides the ability to see things differently and possibly identify the correlation and give the ability to have innovation, imagination, exploration for the organization. So, you know, in order to gain some of the things that we might be lacking from experience within the organization or the development of skill sets, one has to really sort of get out of that particular area and constantly reinvent, reestablish one's credibility, and have also the capacity and the capabilities to move the organization forward to help set the direction, maintain the competencies, provide that engagement through self-development, through additional learnings and knowledge, skills, and abilities. The KSAs are so important. But I truly believe, from everything I've seen in my 40 plus years, is that those that seek out those best practices and lessons and learnings and that little dot or that little small nugget that makes them better will eventually make the organization better when they find the ability to put that little square peg in that round hole, or connect a series of dots that suddenly creates a better organizational structure. And I'll add this to it in final closing. It's just a series of elements here that, in order to make ourselves better, we've got to develop a series of attributes that include trust, character, competency, our ability to understand what the intent may be, the integrity, human performance factor, that individual level, results, caring, honesty, the skill set levels, the reputational issues, transparency, fairness, credibility, knowledge, first and foremost, openness, authenticity, experience, and then lastly, being a good person. And one becomes a good person by developing and maintaining those skill sets on a variety of levels. So yes, it's important.
Thanks, Chief. I'm going to throw this to you now, Neil. Your views on the topic.
Yeah, fantastic insight there, Chief. I think the question for me, I was going to flip the question around, Deb, if I'm honest. What responsibility do leaders have? Well, it's not the leader's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility to self-develop. The leaders will just enable that environment. And what do we mean by self-development? So it can mean a number of things. It can mean a layer of competence in the role, through to diversity of thought, which leads on to specific mindsets. Now, all those three elements are not specific to the fire service. They can evolve across a number of roles, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, for across the viewers and people on the panel, that people volunteer their leadership skills across all the roles, and I think that's where you get that blended approach of self-development. And I think self-development needs to be the core of the natural behaviours of a leader. And we've mentioned in the chat here that being a leader does not mean you hold a title. And I think that's a really key point. So another element I just wanted to touch on here, that as we move through the decades, what leaders need to develop their understanding of is the diverse communities and the staff they serve. And I call this social development. And what I mean by that as we're moving from millennials, so at the minute now, I think in 2022, 60 or 70% of the workforce across the world will be millennials. And then we'll move on to Generation Z, then on to the next generation. And this understanding of the social, the social aspect of that will be critical of how we shape services and our workforce to provide a world-class community service. Now, did you notice there that I never said a world-class fire service? And the reason I didn't say that is because a fire service must evolve to maintain their relevance and to expand their offer. I think it's a key consideration. What I did want to talk about really briefly is that within our organisation, we've got a core leadership principle, what we call the 50-30-20 rule. And where this ties into self-development, so the 50 is, so we set a principle that you spend 50% of your time with your staff. So encouraging, developing, working through. You spend 30% of your time on other projects other than your role. And then this is the kicker. We enable people to spend 20% of their time on personal development. Now, I know, just bear with me, because that's just a principle. It never works. It's never as black and white as that. But that's the principle that we've set, because we believe so much in personal development, and to enable, and what Simon was saying about enabling our staff to do that. And then my leaving part here, I had a quick look on our government website this afternoon, just to see what the average a company in the UK spends per person per year on development. And it's £1,600, which is probably, I can't convert, probably $2,300 US, and probably, I don't know, 2,800 Australian. Now, what that says to me is we're not spending nowhere near enough money on developing our teams. That's like such a small percentage of what we spend on salary. So if we want to evolve, we want to evolve the workforce and self-development, and use that for to drive performance and community service, we need to invest. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks very much, Neil. Right, Chief Lewis, I'm going to move on to you next. And I know this is certainly a topic that you are heavily involved in, but what responsibility do fire service leaders have to raise awareness and provide support for mental health?
Well, thank you once again. Fire service leaders have the ultimate responsibility to raise awareness and provide support for mental health, because their first job is to take care of their crew. And one of the ways that you take care of your crew is to take not just care of their physical well-being, to make sure that they're properly outfitted with personal protective gear, but also to make sure that you've given them the tools and the resources, and then, the help if needed to deal with some of the mental health issues that come along with being in the fire service. You have to have a culture in your agency and in your station at all levels that it is okay to talk about it. It's okay to not be okay. The reality is that accumulated trauma has an impact. We have seen this many, many times. It is acknowledging it first, and acknowledging that PTSI, post-traumatic stress injuries, are real. It's surprising, but in this day and age, that anybody would think anything other than that. But there are still agencies that don't really acknowledge the importance of it and the reality of post-traumatic stress injuries. And these, occur either, it doesn't have to be the fire fatality, or the SIDS death. There can be an accumulation of incidents, and that's what I mean when I say it's accumulated. The important thing is that a fire service officer or the leader needs to do in the fire service is acknowledge those feelings that come from coworkers and crew. Let them know that you're there for them anytime they need to talk. And it might not be just, that immediate after action. It might be in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years. The reason I'm so passionate about this is it goes back to some of the service that I did with the Department of State underneath the High Threat Protection Program in Iraq and Afghanistan. I spent 4 years in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. I have lost more friends and more coworkers to suicide than I did to hostile action in my time there. It just, to me, is so troubling that a person, rather than reach out and ask for help, would find it easier to put a gun in their mouth or to take, that way out. This should not happen in our service. We are there for our brothers and sisters. We're there to care for them. Fire service statistics will show that more deaths occur from suicide than all the other line of duty deaths compiled. We have to address this. This is something that is just eating it at our service. We have to consider the possibility that these underlying post-traumatic stress injuries exist, I think, before we dole out discipline on behavior maybe that we don't understand. Why is that firefighter, doing what they're doing? What has led to this? Is it a cry for help? I have encountered this it's several times already. When you have to look in, peel back the layers of the onion, as they say, find out what the root cause is, not just address the behavior itself, ask questions. There are things that can be uncovered. As a fire service leader, we have to seek out and compile a variety of resources. If you're dependent on your city or your county or your government's emergency or your employee assistance program, that's probably not going to be sufficient if you're in North America. I can say that I have not yet found an EAP standalone that is sufficient by itself. If someone knows where there's a great one, please post it in the chat comments. It really is holistic. They are not frequently trusted, and sometimes for good reasons, depending on the way that they're set up. I will talk about one program that's been very effective. I've seen it work firsthand for people that I've actually referred to it. And that's the program we have here in Minnesota. It's called MinFire. It focuses on the 3 biggest threats to firefighters when you look at what's killing firefighters or retired firefighters. It's the cardiac, the cancer, and then the mental health awareness or the mental health issues that are left untreated. As a fire service leader, we have to look at the health of our workers holistically. We have to engage with them. We have to talk with them. We have to, like I said, let them know that it's okay to be not okay sometimes, but to point them in that right direction. You do that by creating a culture where people seek help, where they're not afraid to speak to someone. Yeah, that was a tough call. You do that by showing that in your actions. And I'll just give one example. I had a brand new paramedic, first week on the job, and he ran his first SIDS death. And I got to the crew after it'd probably been a half an hour or so after they got back, and they're still restocking the ambulance. And I approached him and I said, you know, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine, chief. Well, what do you think a guy that is in his first week of probation is going to say when his chief asks him if he's okay? Of course he's going to say okay. I said, hey, I know this was a tough call. I know you've got young kids, you know, and I just basically right there, I said, you know, if you want to go home and give him a hug, that's fine. You can have the rest of the day off. He said, oh, no, chief, I'm fine. When the battalion chief already offered that to me. And I want to be here with the crew. And that's when I knew that the culture in the department had changed from the old suck it up, you're fine, to it's okay not to be okay. We're going to give you the time off, but we're here to support you if you want to stay. And I'm very, very proud of our crews for doing that. And I'm proud of the culture that has existed there. It's been a big change.
Thank you very much, Chief Lewis. Captain McKenzie, if you could share your thoughts on the same topic.
Absolutely. And Chief Lewis, thanks for your poignant perspective. And my thoughts are very aligned with yours. The getting leaders to be aware is probably the first thing, just statistically knowing that in the military and in service agencies, law enforcement, medical, and fire, we are at greater risk to ourselves than our occupation, which one would hope is a sobering statement to the leaders across the workforce. I think raising awareness to warning signs, like so that they could say across their jurisdiction, and we say across the community, is have we noticed any changes and patterns and in behavior? Like somebody who we didn't used to have a behavioral challenge with in the firehouse. Are they being different than their norm? And maybe why? You know, can we have a chat in the back? And is there different choices around food, around adult beverages, or the one that for me, when I recognize that, okay, why am I not, I'm a cyclist, why am I not on my bike? Like not doing the things we've always loved, that might be an indicator that we need to look inside. I'm going to put some things in the chat here after speaking on resources. One of my favorite is firestrong.org, I believe started at Phoenix Fire. And more than 100 agencies are part of this, including our local dispatch center, and the 10 fire agencies that all are dispatched from the same center have their own web page there, and it has resources for cancer wellness awareness and sleep deprivation problems, or what if someone's at a self-harm issue, or if they're self-medicating, and that's a great resource. And there's many that the Chief Lewis's point, that are important for them to know about. I think most EAP programs would offer 5 sessions with a clinician to talk about situations. And sometimes the situation is often, and I'm grateful, I've had a number of debriefings on tragic calls with crew members, with trained peer support members that were highly effective and highly efficient. And there's been a few calls that are well beyond what a peer support person is prepared to deal with, multi-fatal incidents where speaking to a clinician is likely or may be a better choice depending on the person. It's all a fluid dynamic. But the other thing that Firestrong did, at least locally, I think the local peers went out to various clinicians who maybe had a specialty in first response, so that if someone does reach out, and maybe it's through the AAP, but maybe they're like, I don't know if I trust the EAP because it's inside my jurisdiction. I want full confidentiality. So they reach outside that. It can be really important that the clinician has some background and understanding what it is to be a first responder. And then the last thing I'd say is the cumulative effects. Sure, Chief, the first fatal call I went on, somebody asked how I was, and I said, oh, I was fine. And there was very much a mentality of suck it up, buttercup in the day. And we've become more aware, more emotionally intelligent and emotionally available. And with that is the calls added up. The first 1,500 calls, I didn't notice much. The next 5,000, I noticed a little more. Oh, the last few thousand calls I ran, there were some tough ones. And it's had a cumulative effect. So for the leaders that are maybe 15 years into the career, they need to be aware that their personnel that are 30 years into their career have a different set of traumatic exposures.
Thanks very much, Captain Mackenzie. Right, we're on to our final question of the day. I actually can't believe how quickly this has gone. And I'm going to start with Martin and then ended up with Chief Tracy. What is the most important decision you've had to make as a fire service leader?
Thank you once more. Let's say in fire service leadership, we'll be looking at operational decision-making and administrative decision-making. To me, the decision I've taken before now as a leader in fire service, in my department, in my state, in Nigeria, something happened someday. A lot of people, when firefighters go to fight fire, at the fire scene, you see the public throwing stones on them, probably beating them up, and so on. At a time, I have to take that drastic decision, and I have to communicate to the government. What did I do? I told them that I have to start this, that any environment, any community that tries to lay their hands on firefighters anytime, that I will change my mind as the fire chief of this state. No, anytime there's fire break there, no firefighter will go there to fight fire. It became an issue, but I have to face it and defend it. That every now and then you see firefighters, they throw stones on them, a fire which will really cause, we are only going to assist the public to extinguish the fire. You see them throwing stones and beating up firefighters. Then I said to the government, no way, I cannot continue this way. Even when we call sister agencies or the police and the soldiers to assist, equally to lead firefighters to the fire scene so that nobody will touch them. You still see the same public who we are serving, who are coming to assist, you see them throwing stones and beating firefighters up. Then I decided to take that operational decision. That anywhere they touch any firefighter, that we fire service can never go there anytime to fight fire. And at a time, they start seeing reasons and they have to stop. Because fire is something they can never stop. It will always come because it's people's mistake that cause fire outbreak. And we'll continue to go there to assist them, the public, to extinguish the fire. So when they see that firefighters are determined to stop going there to assist them, and they don't have any other chance to fight the fire, except if firefighters come there to fight fire. So decided they stop. That was the operational decision making, and I have to take it and defend it. It wasn't easy, but I have to take it. Now again, the administrative part of it, which is also a decision a leader, a fire leader have to take while becoming the leader. A lot of times you see, that is why I believe so much in transformational leadership in fire service. Transformational leadership in the process, whereby the leader will do what? Will always be there for the firefighters to do, even the followers. You do what they see, you're always there to make sure that their welfare are being taken care of. I remember in my state, in my department, there's all we talk about the hazardous allowance, which are being paid to firefighters. Nothing is given to them. Then I have to stand on it. I have to tell the government, if this continues, that is to say, no firefighter will be able to go anywhere to fight fire because there's no motivational attachment to what we are doing. And because of that, government decided to change the narrative. And they start to provide everything necessary which the firefighters needed, at least them to excel in the job. That is their welfare. And as a leader, if you cannot take those administrative decisions which can help the followers, which can help the firefighters because you are the chief, then the firefighter, you will never see anybody to follow you. And that is why I'll continue to say every now and then, if you are a leader and you are leading and nobody is following you, you are only doing a walk. You are walking alone. And that is the most important area in the life of every leader, that you make sure that you have leaders who are going to follow you, who will trust you, who will believe in you. And that is when you talk about loyalty. You see these people, because they believe in you, because you do what they want, you do what they like, and you provide for them and fight for their welfare, you see them, they will continue to follow you and work with you at any given time. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Martin. All right, Chief Tracy, you're going to finish it up for us today. And what is the most important decision that you've had to make as a fire service leader? Chief Tracy, are you there?
Deb, yeah, I had to unmute myself. It's incredible where this roundtable went or has gone. Martin, thank you so much for sharing your heart and soul, and Gerard as well. Most important decision, again, everyone, I'm so proud to be part of this committee and to know all of you people. I would be proud to work with every one of you. Every one of you has a soul. An important decision I had to make once was at a fire, and people may have heard about it. It was an event that's referred to in the New York City Fire Department as Father's Day. And I arrived late. I was a chief in the 4-9 battalion. The 4-9 battalion was the incident commander. It was another chief who was working for me that day. I was to come in and relieve him that night. I came in early and I went to the site, and there was still a firefighter trapped in the basement of the building. They were attempting to cut a hole above the area where he was. I was able to, team up with some other firefighters that were in part of the Special Operations Command, because before I was a chief officer, I was the captain of a special unit in the New York City Fire Department, Squad 18. So I knew these firefighters. That was one of the units in Special Operations. And the fire conditions had darkened down enough to allow us entry. We were able to, get into the building and get into a position where we could descend down into the basement and recover this firefighter. We radioed to everyone else outside that we had reached the firefighter, and we were bringing him up. And the important decision I made was that rather than the firefighters that were right there, bringing the firefighter up. They should not be the firefighters to bring this hero outside. And outside was at least 100 firefighters, if not more, because it was a multiple alarm. A building had exploded. The decision I made was to bring in the fellow firefighters of the unit that the firefighter worked in, the firefighter who was trapped and who we recovered in the basement. He was a member of Rescue 4. So the decision I made was to bring in the members of Rescue 4, bring them into the building and allow them to carry him out. And, you know, we've been talking about PTSD. When I first came into the department, you know, you come across fatalities and things like that. And Kurt McKenzie he gave a comment, "Suck it up, buttercup." You know, I had been in Vietnam, things like that. So when you came across, you know, traumatic events, you didn't even think about it. You just went back to the firehouse. Sometimes you didn't even talk about it. And as I, let's say, went through my career, and of course, Father's Day was June of 2001. And we thought that that was a tragic day in the life of the New York City Fire Department. September 11th would be worse. And I'm sure I'm still living with that. So PTSD, it's a real thing. And every day is therapy. And I had no idea where this roundtable was going, to say, oh my God, thank you for the opportunity. So that was an important decision that I made in my career that I was going to share with you. And I never thought it would get emotional like this, but thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you so much, Chief Tracy. And I'm kind of feel the same way. I knew this was a special group, but I can't thank you all enough for your honesty and vulnerability. That is true leadership as far as I'm concerned. We're a little bit over time, and what an amazing amount of chat going on and questions, such an engaged audience as well. I see someone commented that we could do this weekly and have stuff to talk about. Maybe not weekly, but I'm certainly keen to do it, you know, whether it's once a month or every second month. Feel free to connect with me directly on LinkedIn or follow OpsCentral. Let's keep this going, and let's stay connected through topics that are meaningful to all of us. So thank you all very, very much.